All right, diving in today. And this one's based on a listener suggestion. You wanted a deep dive on Charlie Munger, so here we go. The source material is Poor Charlie's Almanack, and it is a beast of a book. So what we're trying to do today is give you the express lane, through Mungerland. What were his most important ideas? How did he live his life, and why should we care?
Right off the bat, the title Poor Charlie's Almanack, it screams Benjamin Franklin, right? Poor Richard's Almanack. I mean, come on. And Franklin was the ultimate multi-hyphenate, inventor, scientist, diplomat, printer, you name it. And Munger was really drawn to that broad knowledge, but practical knowledge. And that's a big takeaway right there for you. Don't just learn stuff. Figure out how to use it. Think about Franklin, all those inventions, all those writings, all aimed at making things better.
Yeah, and Poor Richard's Almanack was the blog of its day, super popular, tons of copies sold. And it was more than just dates and stuff. It was Franklin dropping truth bombs left and right. No nation was ever ruined by trade, he'd say. Or, if you would not be forgotten as soon as you are dead and rotten, either write things worth reading or do things worth the writing. Pretty good, huh?
Oh, and Franklin was funny too, love your neighbor, yet don't pull down your hedge. Or my personal favorite, three may keep a secret if two of them are dead. Classic. But you see how Munger was totally into Franklin, a real mentor from the past.
Totally. It's like having a cheat code for life, right? Tap into Franklin's brain through Munger's.
Exactly. Now, Charles Thomas Munger himself, born in Omaha, Nebraska in 1924, becomes the vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway in 1978, works side by side with Warren Buffett. And he just passed away in 2023 at the ripe old age of 99. But here's the thing. He started out as a lawyer, real estate law, pretty successful at it too. And that experience really shaped his thinking.
Right.
Analyzing deals, understanding contracts, the whole bit. And then Buffett comes along and says, Chuck, you got to ditch the lawyering. Your real talent's in investing.
And that meeting in 1959, talk about a fateful dinner. It wasn't just the start of a legendary friendship, but also, the foundation of what Berkshire Hathaway became. It makes you wonder, how many incredible partnerships are out there just waiting to happen,
Oh, tons. Now back to the book, Poor Charlie's Almanack. It's more than just a bio, It's got Munger's speeches, his thoughts on learning, his investment strategies. It was put together by Peter D. Kaufman, and Buffett really pushed for it to happen. Big shout out to Whitney Tilson, Michael Broggie, and Carol Loomis, too. They all helped bring this treasure trove of knowledge to the world.
So quick recap for anyone who needs it. Berkshire Hathaway, founded in 1962, Omaha-based, started with textiles, shifted to insurance, and the rest, as they say, is history. Huge long-term gains for shareholders. Then there's Wesco Financial, a bit older, founded in 1959 in Pasadena, a mix of businesses, insurance, steel services, even furniture rental. Berkshire had a big chunk of it for a while before fully absorbing it in 2011. So, two powerful engines driving Munger and Buffett's world.
All right, let's jump into the book. Buffett's foreword, super insightful. He lays out his immense respect for Munger. And he makes this great point about Franklin's advice versus Munger's must-do attitude. Franklin might suggest saving money, but Munger, he'd demand it. Franklin might say be on time, but Munger, be early, always. High standards,
And Buffett gives us that great story, right? Munger's family loaded at this point, and they're taking cross-country bus trips while their rich friends are jet-setting all over the place. Munger, he walks the walk. Doesn't just talk about thrift, he lives it.
Absolutely. Then Buffett goes on to talk about what he looks for in a partner. Someone smarter than him, wiser, someone who doesn't need to brag, who learns from mistakes, who's generous, and makes the whole journey a joy.
And get this, he says he found all those qualities in Charlie Munger back in 1959. What are the odds, right?
Amazing. And then Munger, classic Munger, in A Word About Warren Buffett, he's super humble, almost downplays his own role, says Buffett would have been just as successful without me. Now, Munger gives credit to Benjamin Graham, the value investing guru, but he saw that Buffett was destined for greatness regardless. He just needed a little nudge in the right direction. And Graham's approach was very much about finding those undervalued, often struggling businesses. But Munger helped shift Buffett towards looking at those fantastic, well-managed companies, even if they weren't dirt cheap.
But the thing that I found fascinating was Munger's observation about Buffett always growing, always improving, even later in life, which Munger thought was incredibly rare. And Munger also highlights that Berkshire's cash-generating machine, it comes from owning those high-quality businesses. And then classic Munger humor, he worries about them agreeing too much. Is that a bad thing?
Well, it's interesting, right? They shared those core values, but their backgrounds were so different. Munger with his legal mind, brought a different kind of rigor to their analysis. So maybe that's how they avoided groupthink.
Makes sense. Then we get to Buffett's tribute after Munger's passing, Charlie Munger, 1924-2023. And it's here where Buffett calls Munger the architect of Berkshire, with himself as the general contractor. Like, wow, right? That reframes their whole relationship. Munger, the strategic mastermind.
Yeah, and Buffett really drives home Munger's role in that shift, away from just buying cheap companies. Remember, around 65, Munger pushes Buffett to go for those great businesses, even at a fair price. And it was a game changer.
And Buffett emphasizes Munger's constant support, his guidance, even when Buffett, might slip back into old habits. And the generosity, always giving Buffett the credit, that's a real testament to their bond.
Absolutely. Now we get Li Lu's perspective, a very successful investor who was close to Munger. His tribute to Charlie Munger's legendary life is really moving. He talks about hearing the news of Munger's passing while he was in Asia and their last phone call.
And Li Lu goes back to Munger's home in Santa Barbara, remembering their first meeting there back in 2003 around Thanksgiving. That meeting sparked like a 2-decade partnership, not just business, but mentorship, a real role model for Li Lu.
Li Lu tells this great story about his concerns back in 2006, 2007, about those credit default swaps, CDSs. He thought the housing market was shaky and the insurance being sold against those mortgage bonds, it was way too cheap, like the risk wasn't being priced in.
So what did Munger say?
Munger's response was fascinating. He said, look, if you're right, if those CDS buyers are owed all that money, the whole system collapses. Those payouts wouldn't even matter then. And he questioned, like, the ethics of profiting from a disaster like that, people losing their homes, the whole economy in free fall. It's not just about the money. It's about the bigger picture.
Which brings us to Munger's golden rule. Only do business at a price where, if positions were reversed, both of us would be happy with the deal. And Li Lu says Munger lived by that, always making sure the other side felt good about the deal, too.
Now, Li Lu also talks about Munger's resilience. Even late in life, after losing his wife Nancy, dealing with health issues, his vision fading, his curiosity never dimmed, he even had a big investment win at 99. Incredible.
And Munger's influence, it's global. Li Lu points out how popular Poor Charlie's Almanack is in China, over 1.25 million copies sold. He connects it to, this void left by the decline of Confucian values. After the imperial exams ended, there was this gap, and Munger's ideas, learning, perseverance, rationality, ethics, they really resonated.
And Li Lu brings in that quote from C. McKean, the historian, about the weight of death. Heavier than Mount Tai, lighter than a feather. He says Munger's like Mount Tai. That's impact right there.
In the Taiwan First Edition preface, Li Lu talks about his positive experiences in Taiwan and how Munger embodies those traditional Chinese virtues. He even compares him to Confucius in a business context.
And remember those tough times in 2010. Losing his wife, losing his sight. Li Lu talks about Munger facing those challenges with his trademark rationality, his optimism, even his joy when he regained some of his vision. And he reinforces the Taiwan edition's title, Poor Charlie's Common Sense.
The book's got this great section, their recommendations. Song Wenke, former chair of Taipei 101, recommends it for the life lessons, wants to share it with her kids. You see, Munger's wisdom, it goes way beyond just investing.
Right. Zhang Xihan, president of Costco Asia, he's impressed with Munger's experience, his knowledge. He sees the book as a guide to finding investment opportunities. And he points out that both Munger and Buffett are big on long-term thinking. Real American role models, he says.
Now, Lei Haozi, in his preface, My Sword I Leave to Him Who Can Wield It, he talks about first reading about Munger back in 2004, and then the impact of Poor Charlie's Almanack when it came out in 2011.
The idea that grabbed Lei Haozi was that pursuing wisdom through reading, through analysis, it can lead to financial security, and that frees you up to live a better life. No more stressing about money all the time.
And he even says he reread the book to help him through tough times in his own life. Lei Haozi then lists those key Munger concepts: mental models, reverse thinking, circle of competence checklists, and understanding how human misjudgment works. And he throws in that classic Buffett line, Munger made me go from being a chimp to being a human being. That says it all, right?
But Lei Haozi stresses that knowing the concepts isn't enough. You got to internalize them, make them part of how you think.
He also touches on some of Munger's less obvious ideas. Having realistic expectations, but being ready to jump when opportunity knocks. Staying rational, using common sense, learning constantly, never giving up, and always chasing wisdom. And he ends with that Munger quote, My sword I leave to him who can wield it. That's wisdom being passed on, right?
Exactly. Now, Eric, in his preface, talks about running a huge online book club in Taiwan during the pandemic. They tackled Poor Charlie's Almanack together.
And he says the book had a huge impact, especially during all that chaos. It provided like this grounding, this inner stability. He points out those Munger ideas, mental model, circle of competence, reverse thinking, the Lollapalooza effect.
The Lollapalooza effect, that's classic Munger. When all those biases we have, they gang up on us, and we make some seriously irrational choices.
And Eric emphasizes Munger's focus on character, aligns perfectly with Buffett's emphasis on ethics and courage. And remember, those financial scandals in 2003, Munger was all over those. He even challenged the way economics is taught with his essays, The Psychology of Human Misjudgment and 9 Failings of Academic Economics.
Munger was all about reading, constantly learning, always had a book with him. And Poor Charlie's Almanack itself has this awesome reading list in the back. Great place to start if you want to expand your horizons.
Now, Hanlon, in her preface, she talks about getting the book as a recommendation and then gifting it to graduating students. Like, here's your guide to life, kid.
And she shares those Munger-inspired principles. Don't sell something you wouldn't buy yourself. Don't work for people you can't stand. And try to get a little wiser every day. Simple, but powerful, right?
She even connects Munger's daily self-improvement idea to, like, this ancient Chinese philosopher Zhengzi, who'd examine his own conduct 3 times a day. And Hanlon talks about Munger and Buffett's partnership, how rare that is, 50 years, and their integrity, like, untouchable by wealth or power.
She really drives home Munger's character as a model for young people. Learn from his experience, his wisdom.
Guoganke, in his preface, he calls the book exceptional. And he really focuses on Munger's legal background, how it made him such a rigorous thinker. And in the market, that's crucial. Macroeconomics, business, finance, but also humanities, social sciences, psychology. He put it all together.
Yeah. Guoganke dives into why people mess up investing. Munger thought people overcomplicate things. He even said 98% of the time our attitude toward the stock market is maintain unknowing. Don't try to predict everything. Be patient. And that's his philosophy, using stillness to control movement. Wait for the right opportunity. And of course, there's that circle of competence idea. Invest in what you understand. And Guoganke ends by pointing out that successful investors, like Munger and Buffett, they're not just about the numbers. Character, ethics, a strong belief system, that's what sets them apart.
Peter Kaufman, the editor, he calls Munger a modern-day Benjamin Franklin. That connection again, that interdisciplinary approach to thinking clearly and simply.
Kaufman emphasizes how timeless Munger's ideas are,
right?
Rooted in human nature, in basic truths that apply across fields. And he points out Munger's brilliance, his wit, his values, his way with words. He had this massive knowledge base, and he could pull quotes from anywhere.
Kaufman gives us these great examples of Munger's comparisons. Ancient orators and Johnny Carson, philosophers and investment managers, and his humor, comparing himself to a counting horse, or suggesting Glotz's caffeine syrup as a new slogan for Coke. Classic.
Kaufman also emphasizes Munger's Midwestern values. Lifelong learning, curiosity, calmness under pressure, no envy, integrity, learning from others' mistakes, perseverance, objectivity. And he used humor, reverse thinking, paradoxes to make his points.
And remember, Munger loved using stories, historical examples, business case studies, much more effective than just lecturing, right?
Absolutely. And Kaufman highlights that Munger believed life decisions are more important than investment decisions. His mental models, they're about those big questions, human achievement, our weaknesses, the path to wisdom, not just stock tips. And he wanted independence, which he believed came from building wealth responsibly.
Li Lu's back with his Chinese edition introduction. There's gold in books. He tells his story, coming to the U.S. as a student and then meeting Charlie Munger in 2004. That was a life changer.
Li Lu talks about how influential Buffett and Munger were, how much he learned from them, from Berkshire's success. He remembers hearing Buffett lecture at Columbia, all about value investing. It gave Li Lu hope, a way to achieve financial success, even without connections or tons of money.
Li Lu then dived deep into Buffett and Munger, bought his first stock in the early 90s. He even talks about leaving investment banking, starting his own firm in 98, and then boom, the Asian financial crisis. Early losses, worried investors.
And that's when Buffett and Munger's long-term perspective really helped. Stay the course, ride out the storm, and then the turning point. Meeting Munger face-to-face, they had these early meetings, and then in 2003, Munger offers to invest, but with a condition. Li Lu had to ditch the Wall Street ways.
So Li Lu restructures his company, models it after Buffett and Munger's early partnerships, and from 2004 onward, bam, major success.
Li Lu was blown away by Munger, called him an original objective thinker, a master of reverse thinking. Start with the bad outcome, then work backward to avoid it. And Munger studied failures, obsessed over them, built checklists to prevent those mistakes. He had this childlike curiosity, a scientific mind, a thirst for knowledge. That's how he built his universal wisdom, Li Lu says.
And Munger's intellectual honesty, always looking for evidence that might prove him wrong. That circle of competence idea, knowing your limits. Li Lu remembers Munger defining success as rationality, but with a stricter definition than most people use. And he mentions Buffett's 2-minute effect description. Munger could grasp the essence of a complex business in 2 minutes, like Berkshire's investment in BYD, that Chinese electric car company.
Yeah. And Li Lu points out Munger's impact on Buffett, convincing him to look beyond just cheap stocks, to value those excellent companies. And remember those early warnings about derivatives and accounting tricks. Munger saw the 2008 crash coming. And beyond finance, he was fascinated by psychology, how our biases affect decisions. That was way ahead of the curve, Behavioral finance, that's a big deal now. And Munger was hands-on too. Designed his boat, designing buildings. Details mattered.
Li Lu talks about Munger's energy, even in his 70s, 80s, his morning routine, his amazing memory. And the lessons he learned went beyond investing. It was about character, too. He even shares those little stories about Munger's punctuality, his apology for being late one time, his choice to fly commercial.
Munger, he was frugal, but generous to those he cared about, and a big philanthropist. Li Lu ends by talking about Munger's obsession with studying failure, his belief that we should always strive to improve. He says Munger was one of a kind. And their success together, it speaks for itself. And Munger loved the book. He'd often quote from the Pilgrim's Progress, "My sword I leave to him who can wield it."
Lastly, we've got Li Lu's forward to the Berkshire Hathaway story. He calls Munger Buffett's silent partner, but also his friend, lawyer, advisor, the one who challenged him. Buffett even called Munger the abominable no-man.
Li Lu highlights Berkshire's incredible growth under their leadership. Starting in '64 when Buffett took over, Munger joining a few years later, those Midwestern values, that knack for finding hidden opportunities, and he contrasts Buffett's public persona with Munger's quiet approach.
Then we get into Munger's early life. Born in Omaha in 1924, and it's interesting, so many future big names came from that area. He even worked at Buffett's grandfather's grocery store as a teenager. Long hours, no breaks. The owner, a staunch anti-socialist.
That experience, it instilled a work ethic in both of them. And Munger was bright, always questioning things, especially after reading. Biographies were his favorites. And you see that Franklin admiration early on. His parents encouraged his reading, and he even had access to medical journals through a family friend, Dr. Ed Davis. Sparked his interest in science. And there's that funny story about his hamster trading business, his mom shutting it down because of the smell.
Munger goes to Central High, does well academically, joins the rifle team because he was a smaller guy, even becomes captain, and we get a glimpse of Omaha in the 20s, a peaceful, diverse place. Then the Depression hits in the 30s, and Munger sees poverty firsthand, even has a job counting those struggling.
And there's that story about his grandfather, a judge, helping his son-in-law and his uncle's bank during the Depression. Generosity and good business sense. And his father, Al Munger, a successful lawyer, even gets a windfall from a Supreme Court case. But Munger, he earned his own money, learned the value of independence early on.
After high school in 41, he heads to Michigan to study math, then joins the Air Corps when he turns 19.
All that training, science, engineering, meteorology. He ends up stationed in Nome, Alaska, as a meteorologist. Marries Nancy Huggins during the war, and their first son, Teddy, is born.
Now, Munger didn't have a bachelor's degree, but he gets into Harvard Law thanks in part to a family connection. Graduates in 48, top of his class, moves to California, joins a law firm, settles in South Pasadena, has more kids. But then tragedy strikes. Divorce in 53, and his son Teddy is diagnosed with leukemia. Sadly, Teddy passes away.
Heartbreaking. But through a friend, Munger meets Nancy Berry Borthwick, also divorced, with kids of her own. They connect, marry in 56, and blend their families in Los Angeles.
But Munger, he wasn't content with just being a lawyer. He saw his clients, these successful capitalists, and wanted to build wealth too. And with Nancy's support, he starts investing on the side, always remembering his grandfather's advice about focus and controlled spending.
He starts dabbling in stocks, even acquires equity in an appliance company owned by a client, gets a taste for business firsthand, and then, in '61, he partners with Otis Booth, a client and friend, to develop real estate. They built an apartment building near Caltech, make a killing. And Munger, he gets even sharper. Learns about negotiating contracts, the whole deal.
And in 62, he co-founds Munger, Tolson Olson, this prestigious law firm. But law, it was a means to an end. He was already partnering with Jack Wheeler in an investment company. Al Marshall joins later. And then his father passes away. He goes back to Omaha for the funeral. And the children of Dr. Ed Davis, remember him, they arrange a dinner to welcome Munger back. And guess who's there? Warren Buffett.
The Munger and Buffett families, they had that connection from Charlie's teenage years at the grocery store. And Buffett had heard about Munger through fundraising. Dr. Davis, he was an early investor in Buffett, and he told Buffett he reminded him of Charlie Munger. High praise, even before they met.
And at that dinner, bam, they hit it off. 6 years apart in age, but they clicked. Talked about everything. Business, finance, history. They loved learning from each other. And Buffett, he was already skeptical of Munger's law career. Told him he should be in business.
And they keep talking after Munger goes back to L.A. Phone calls, letters. They realize they're meant to be partners. No fancy contracts, just a handshake, a hug. Two Midwestern guys with a shared vision.
That partnership, it was a win-win. Friendship, investment opportunities, they understood each other. And their businesses benefited too. Buffett used Munger Tullis for legal work. The firm got prestige and clients because of Buffett's reputation.
And Munger Tullis, they were bid on pro bono work. That was Munger's influence, not just about the money. Work with people you'd want as friends. And even after he left in 65, his impact remained. His name's still on the door. And he left his ownership stake to a younger partner who was sick. That's character.
Meanwhile, Munger was building his fortune with Jack Wheeler, Wheeler, Munger and Company, focused on assets, real estate, low costs, minimal overhead. And Wheeler was a member of the Pacific Stock Exchange, so trading fees were low, they were on a roll.
Now, Buffett, he had a great story about Munger. Someone asked him, what's Munger's secret? And Buffett said, this woman, she wanted it in one word. And Munger's answer, rationality.
One word, but so much packed into it.
Right. Buffett said Munger might not always be rational in other areas of life, but in business.
Yeah.
Laser-focused. And that's why they were so successful.
Buffett saw those Franklin-like qualities in Munger. Honesty, integrity, going above and beyond, never complaining, and 40 years as partners, not a single argument.
They didn't always agree on everything, of course, but their goals were always aligned.
And how their investment style evolved over time, that's a story for another deep dive. But I think we've given our listeners a pretty good taste of Charlie Munger, his life, his thinking.
Definitely. And there's so much more to uncover in Poor Charlie's Almanack. But if there's one thing to take away, it's this. Always be learning. Cultivate that curiosity, that thirst for knowledge, like Munger did. And remember, be rational, be ethical, and always strive to be a little bit wiser today than you were yesterday.
Well said. And to our listener who suggested this deep dive, thank you. We hope you found it worthwhile. And to everyone listening, keep those suggestions coming. Until next time, happy diving.